Hello, and welcome to another episode of Disrupting the Dominoes. That's Disrupting the Dominoes of Violence. I'm Arlene Limas. I'm the CEO of PAVE Prevention, and I'm super excited about the conversation we're going to have with my friend. Let me share a little bit of information. Our next guest, former model, well, probably current model, because I think she's beautiful. Current model, martial artist, agent, advocate, business owner, over 30 years of work and advocacy within the modeling industry. Please welcome to our episode today, Marie P. Anderson. Marie, welcome.
Oh, sensei.
So for our listeners and our viewers, there will be, I'm sure, a wealth of martial arts speak in this episode. So you'll get a lot of us in this episode. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's really fun to see you outside of the dojo. I know we had that one event at your corporate invite that you brought me into. What was that, 2 years ago?
That was a year ago in October, so not that long ago.
Okay. But that was great fun. So this is a big treat for me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for taking time. I know it seems you've been super busy and traveling all around the world, and so thanks for making time for us, especially I think you're on vacation at this time. So thanks for making time.
My pleasure.
Okay, so let's get started. Please share with our audience and our listeners, Marie, a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today.
I'm going to be 65 in a couple of weeks, so I'll try to squish it down. And I don't know, am I supposed to be presenting the icing of my life or the raw meat of my life? Some people can't handle my truth, so I want to be sensitive to your content needs.
Marie, I think that our listeners and our viewers would like to hear with whatever you're comfortable with. And for our purpose, we can always issue, when this goes live, we can issue a warning content as it comes out. But I would really like you to share whatever you are comfortable with.
Thank you. I have been in the modeling industry technically since I was 6 years old, professionally since 1980. My mother had been a model before she met my father, and many years later I would be born and we would be living in Cocoa Beach, Florida, while my father was a rocket scientist at NASA on the Apollo moon program. And she was a community activist. And during that time, she would do fundraisers, and they were all they were called back then style shows, what we know to be called runway. And so I was one of the models that she would put into my show. I would be like wearing a little bikini or whatever. So that's how I got introduced to the world that I've been in literally my whole life. God, I'm going to try to squish this down. There's so much there. But I did model ever since 6 years old, on and off, people asking me to do it. As I grew into my teen years, I would try more aggressively, and I would be told as a size 6 that I was too fat. And being a more curvier girl, that was very discouraging. And keep in mind, that was the 70s where, like Twiggy riding out of the 60s and it's the 70s. It was all about super thin girls, and it wasn't about curvy girls. So the point being is that I was never going to be a supermodel, and that just wasn't what felt like my calling. I would eventually graduate from high school, move to Chicago, and as a 20-year-old, I would become the studio manager for one of the top fashion photographers in the world, Stan Malinowski. And working for Stan is really how I got my true authentic education and understanding the world of international haute couture. And while working with him in places like Rome, we would book, interestingly enough, a little more exotic, a little curvier, because in Italy, they were looking for super skinny. So we would go to Rome and shoot the collections there and the Italian collections. And then we go to New York and shoot a cover of Vogue. And then we would come back to Chicago and shoot a week of Sears. Back when there were catalogs.
Full spectrum.
But I would end up evolving out of that into either owning or running every top fashion agency in Chicago. And I left the traditional model booking agency 5 years ago so I could focus more on empowerment and model advocacy on a one-on-one basis, as opposed to working in a booking agency where you work with hundreds of models, just booking them. Now I can do it on my terms.
Yeah. So thank you for that background. And that brings me to one of my first questions. I'm going to share something off your website, and that is for Boss Babes Models. And right under like about us, it says purpose, dignity, empathy, courage. These are not words that come to mind when I envision a modeling agency or an organization or company that deals with models. In addition to that, I'm going to read this. Boss Babes Models is a coaching company that teaches aspiring models how to launch their career while also maintaining their dignity, their mental health, and their self-respect. To me, these are not the terms and the words and the visions I have of this industry. So,
Thank you.
If you could share a little bit on why this advocacy is so important to you.
Okay, trying to condense that story as well. And let me go back to thank you for being so astute and sharing my calling. That is exactly my objective, is mental health first for the kids. I am when I say kids, they're all my kids, because being a senior citizen, everybody's younger than me for the most part. But it goes back to childhood, where as a very young child, I started experiencing sexual impropriety. And as I grew older, those experiences would become more violent, more intense, way more inappropriate, and nobody advocated for me, not even my parents. And hopefully you're old enough to know that back in the day, we just didn't talk about things like this. And the child certainly isn't taught to speak up if somebody touches you inappropriately. It wasn't even in our realm of thought. And so when I would bring issues to my parents, they just stare at me like, what do you expect me to do about it, kind of thing. And so anyway, the point was, I learned as a child, I had no advocacy and I have no safety. There was no boundaries for my body. There was no consequences for any of the predators. I would eventually end up with a lot of addictions to try to self-medicate. Sugar, oddly enough, was my first addiction as a 6-year-old. And most people don't realize that sugar is a very serious addiction and something I still struggle with today. That's where it's more like the awareness of, okay, this is happening to me. I don't want this to happen to me. There's nobody around me to help me not have it happen to me again. And so I just started life early on being a survivor, and then learning how to daily survive with the drugs, alcohol, sugar, you name it. I was doing whatever I could to not kill myself. And then I would end up in the modeling business, thinking I was like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz before we got to the end with the old man behind the curtain. I thought the modeling business was just this glamorous, exciting, everybody loves you, wearing beautiful clothes kind of experience. Very early on, I experienced sexual assault by a top photographer, one of the top fashion photographers in Chicago. Did I tell anybody? I told my oldest brother, who was his best friend, and my older brother started laughing. Yeah, thinking it was so funny. This is not funny. So that taught me right there, nobody cares, right? Again, it doesn't matter how old I was. Every time I would reach to somebody to have some sanity or some kind of understanding of the process, I never had that posse around me to help me fall through it. as I began to become even more successful in the modeling business, for example, becoming an agent inside of Elite Chicago, what I would find, and again, keep in mind, I was still drinking, drugging, I was participating in that insane life, not knowing any better. I just became part of the problem because I didn't know any better. And so as time would evolve and I would get higher up in the hierarchy of the elite global system, I would become the vice president. And although I knew some of my models were coming back, having already experienced violent sexual experiences over in Europe by the same predators, it was like part of the culture. And this is, Marie, shut up. It's no big deal. This is just, it's the way it's done.
Just par for the course. It's just part of the.
And so I would overhear a conversation, not intending, in Ibiza between the two head men of the elite network, John Casablancas, Gerald Marie, where two women from the elite staff in New York were begging the men to stop sleeping with the underage girls, like literally 13, 14 years of age. And John's response was, "You guys are being puritanical, stop." And Gerald Marie's response was, "We are men now, we have our needs," completely dismissing these women who were trying to be proactive. So I quit. I quit in protest in 1990, thinking I was going to make a difference. And I tried to get the press involved. Nobody wanted to listen to what I had to say. Tried to talk to all sorts of journalists. Nobody wanted to hear anything that I had to say, Arlene. And then, thank God, the journalist Michael Gross from New York, who's written all sorts of books and all sorts of articles for very prestigious newspapers. He finally had written a book called Model, the Ugly Business of Beautiful Women. And that was the first time I had an advocate who cared about my truth.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm trying to condense things here because there's so much experience in my life. But it was not having an advocate in my life that I started seeing all the abuses in the modeling business very early on. And I saw nobody was advocating for them. So I figured, okay, let me step up.
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm very sorry that happened, Marie. Second, thank you for the great work you're doing. And I'm so glad you're here to do it. So I know the path was and all those things to get here, but you are doing what you're meant to do right now, and you are changing lives and making the world safer, because those dominoes keep falling, Marie, unless they get disrupted. You found someone disrupted your dominoes, and then it changed your path.
Yeah.
I know that you have shared with me that you were sober, and so your path changed. Your dominoes were disrupted. So I'm very grateful for that. And that's what we're aiming to do with the training at PAVE Prevention, is impart those skills like you spoke about, learning how to set a boundary, understanding inappropriate coercion, all those things. Those are human safety skills. We should have them.
Thank you.
To every single person on this earth, right?
Agreed.
You are doing that. In your neck of the woods, in your industry, you are changing the way things get done. You are disrupting those dominoes. Thank you. I have a couple questions. You've touched upon it already. Violence, by definition, especially in the workplace, violence is defined by OSHA as the full spectrum, from microaggression all the way through physical event, assault, or violent event there, right? So how is it impacting your industry? You touched upon it already, but is it changed? Has it changed? Has the Me Too movement changed any of that? And then second, I want to just point out I see so much parallel from models and athletes. I just see them walking a lot of the similar paths where they have this dream. They have to interact and have the influence of people to get to that dream, whether that be a coach or an agent or a photographer. And people, unfortunately, if things are left to stay without light on them, they will always maneuver that scenario. Bad people will find a way to maneuver that route. having conversations, shedding light on things, letting athletes have a voice, letting models have a voice to speak their concerns. This is how we change it.
Yeah.
This is how we change it. But back to that, I know I got off on a tangent there, but so how is violence on a day in, day out, that full spectrum, microaggression to physical event, how is that impacting your industry?
First, I don't want people to think that I'm Debbie Downer. I'm just very pragmatic and I share my truth. From a positive standpoint, here in America, there is an absolute angel on earth. Her name is Sarah Ziff. She has an organization out of New York called the Model Alliance, where she's actually even had laws changed in the state of New York and in the state of California. And so that ripple effect or the butterfly effect around the world is certainly changing things. There's another organization out of London called Models Trust. Elizabeth Peyton Jones is the founder of that organization, and she's doing similar work that Sarah is doing. And then I'm trying to do my thing out of Chicago, but I haven't changed laws. Sarah to me is a shero, right? She's accomplished great things in our industry that I wasn't able to accomplish. And that's not ego talking, that's just fact. But then I'm very much believing in my path as my path, and God's got a plan, and he doesn't always send me a text or an email to let me know what's going to happen. So if Sarah's journey was meant to be more significant or whatever, God bless her. I support that. I'm excited. And the same with Elizabeth Peyton Jones over in London. Me, I think I'm a micro influencer in just with each person. That metaphor of the starfish on the ocean. Have you ever heard that along the seashore? Have you ever heard that metaphor?
Hear it.
So essentially, there's a little boy rushing to throw all these starfish that have come on the shoreline, and he's rushing to put all the starfish back into the ocean. And a man walks by and says, "Why are you rushing to help these starfish? You can't get them all back in the ocean." He said, "Yes, but I made a difference to that one and that one." So I'm like the starfish, little boy with the starfish, just trying to do what I can on a micro level. But the industry, between Michael Gross and all of his books and articles, the various global television shows that have talked about this business, the Me Too movement, there has been a lot of awareness. At least we're having the conversation now. 20 years, we wouldn't have had this conversation. So there's a lot of good that is happening. And let me predicate that on, I'm still hearing the stories on a daily basis of hostile work environments and the culture, whether it be inside of the agency or the photo studio or the client studio. It's still happening and still happening. We haven't made progress, but I know we've made progress. And just to have this conversation, you and me, is an indication that good things are happening. I wish we could eradicate it 100%, but I don't see that. As long as there's power and an imbalance of power, we can't eradicate it.
One of the things that I advocate for within sport, and PAVE's mission is to make every workplace safer. But for me, I always bring it back to a sports example or a sports analogy. That's just where I've spent most of my life. To me, a perfect world, at least at an elite level sport, that when a team comes to a training camp or a team comes to a prep camp before the Olympics or the World Championships, they go through 16 hours of training on how to set a boundary, on how to use their voice, on how to identify these things, better communication skills between athlete to coach, that can transfer coworker to boss. I think we change everything if that training just becomes part of the onboarding process for every athlete in the world. Is there a similar onboarding that a model goes through where this type of training could apply?
With my clients, I try. when I do my one-on-one coaching with them, this state of California has, thanks to Sarah Ziff and the Model Alliance, the state of California passed a law where the modeling agencies have to provide materials, sex education, and just creating safer work environments for the models and the agents. So it's like a PDF that everybody needs to read. At least the state of California is acknowledging this is a problem and essentially force-fed the agents and the management companies of those agencies to create these PDFs to at least have the conversation. I should assure you, very few people are reading that PDF.
Yeah.
There's nothing like in-person, one-on-one organic, yes, exactly, one-on-one organic conversation to really drill it home. Arlene, there is no motivation. And truthfully, my speaking out has created essentially my being pretty much ostracized from the business. Nobody will hire me in the agency business anymore because I am a whistleblower. I'm talking about things that create drama, create disruption. So it's like, Marie, be quiet. Just go over there and do your thing. We don't need you in the agency business. And this is going to sound very crass, but it is the truth as a general kind of statement. And I'm not saying every agent is like this or every agency is like this, but as the majority, most agencies see fast fashion, meaning when you go to a Zara or, gosh, I'm spacing on the various stores. The stores, they only charge $8 for a t-shirt.
Okay.
And you're not worried that t-shirt is going to be ruined in a few months because it was fast fashion.
Okay.
And I won't get into the influence in how it hurts our earth, but just with fast fashion and having that kind of garbage on our planet. But the point is that a lot of agents, a lot of photographers, the models generally are treated like they're that t-shirt that can be thrown out in a few months because there's going to be another t-shirt for the next season that they're going to be interested in. There's a great deal of abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse that goes on in the modeling world.
Yeah. So that happens, of course, with athletes as well. It also happens in offices and people. There are people in leadership roles, in coaches roles, in ownership roles that see us all as just a commodity or a piece of property. And yeah, I mean, I understand the example and the point you're trying to make on that. And then when you have someone in fast fashion, right, who may not be as popular as another person, and the other person is the abuser, then all bets are off.
Exactly.
This is our earner. This is our gold medal winner. This is our possibility at a medal. This is our possibility at a big account or a Vogue cover. So, this is our big sales guy. He's set the record for sales. And so their behavior is overlooked, intentionally overlooked to win a medal, to win a contract, to take a magazine cover, I would say, in your industry.
And as we were talking about before, the power imbalance is so extreme. And what you have are models are not employees of the agencies. They're self-employed contractors. They're freelance people. So it's not as if there's an HR that they can report to try to get something done. It's just aside from like a Sarah Ziff or a me or Elizabeth Peyton Jones in London, and a lot of them don't even know about it.
Is there not a union that protects them? Wow.
No model union. I've been doing it for 40 years. They have tried, when I say they, collectively, the industry has tried a couple of times. The challenge is that the bulk of the people in the business are so young that they don't understand. First of all, they don't understand what an active role they could have because they feel powerless in any situation, even signing a contract with an agency. Most of the kids are so desperate to post on Instagram that they just sign with an agency. They'll do anything. You hand them a contract, they'll just sign it without even reading it. They don't even care. They don't care what they're agreeing to because they're so desperate, insecure, and needing to be a part of the scene. They don't understand how to participate and to advocate for themselves. And so when you put them into castings, and it's like Harvey Weinstein, the power dynamic is not going to change because the kids they just don't have the balls to advocate for themselves. So when you start talking about unions, they're like, what? Why do I want that? I don't care. Yeah. I have to have sex with them. Oh, okay. I'll do whatever's necessary.
It seems to be very ingrained in the system of your industry. Wow.
Yes, it is.
Until people know that they can be successful without that, it's very difficult.
That's where that mental health component comes in.
It has to be a real cultural shift. I think what you spoke about as far as policy change in California is huge. And that's one of the things that came up out of the summit that you participated in is what do we need? What is the right combination of things that we need? We need to train the individual, make sure that they have the skill set. We need to come with policy. We need to come with leadership down change. So it's got to be all these components to really have the culture shift that we need. It's not going to be easy, but we're not giving Marie.
Nope.
But I have one more question, and I could talk to you for another hour, if not hours. You know that, Marie. And we've had a couple side conversations already on this topic. So,
yeah.
But I do have one last question, and I ask this of all my guests. If you could have the company of any one person or organization or group that you feel, man, if I just got in front of these people or this person, I could really facilitate some change.
There's that could be a long list, but if I was going to be really honest, and we haven't even spoken about her, Cindy Crawford.
So for her to come forward and really lead this movement, it would have an impact.
Immense, because she's got her daughter, Aya, who's in the business. She's a super successful model. I don't know if her son is still modeling, but somebody of that magnitude who has a strong enough personality and confident enough in themselves to speak their mind. Cindy was never a shy Bambi. That girl spoke her mind from the day one, which I love. I love very strong, opinionated people. It challenges me to do a better job at my job.
That's where it all starts, with conversations and holding people accountable. Those are two things I feel strongly about. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm sure our listeners and our viewers are going to love this. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that you're involved with? Any initiatives or programs that you want to share with our listeners and viewers that we can support?
The only thing that comes to mind is that if there are any parents out there who want to know the truth about the modeling business, my little coaching company, it's just me. There's no staff. It's just me doing everything. They can reach out to me through my Instagram, Boss Babe Models, and I can tell them about my coaching services. I don't give it away for free, but I do have the coaching services, and I have superb experience to share with them.
Wow, that's fantastic. Anyone, in my opinion, anyone that has a child or a young person that they're responsible for, that has this dream, how can you not connect with an advocate like yourself? I would not go out into that without your guidance. So I'm glad it's available, and I hope it continues to be as successful as it is. Again, with the ideas of purpose, dignity, empathy, and courage. Not what you think about. Thank you for leading the way there. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great episode. Once again, before I sign off, thank you.
My pleasure.
Us, and we are PAVE Prevention, Proactive Anti-Violence Education. If you like what you heard and you saw, please subscribe. This is another episode of Disrupting the Dominoes of Violence. Thank you.